Thank you so much, Alan. And Gareth, what a story. I mean, you've been through, I suppose, a lot more than many other people have been, but yet there you are here today telling a fantastic story. I did like the bit about you said do you still like beans and sausages by any chance?
I do, yeah. And ravioli was another one of my favourites as well. The little ravioli tins. Yeah.
I mean, looking back on those things now, how do you feel now when you look back on your life like you've just done?
Um, I feel some sadness
Hmm.
because I often wonder how things might have turned out if I was born into a different family, if I was born
Hmm.
into a different situation. But then I also have this. There is an emboldenment that comes with it, where it's like actually, whenever I feel those emotions, I have to remember that I've overcome them, and I have to remember that Jesus is there, and it's like it is just what it was. And there will be other young boys and other young girls out there in similar situations, and my heart goes out to them now. It's like I'm not
Hmm.
thinking about me anymore. I'm thinking about the parents of those kids. Who can I reach? Who can I help? How
Hmm.
can I get in touch with those kids and get them to Jesus sooner? If that makes sense, to be like, look, we want to help you and get that stuff transformed and changed sooner. And that's where it takes me.
Now you seem very strong in yourself now in your faith at the moment. But when you were a young boy, of course, when the abuse was happening, how did you find the strength to actually, tell your mother?
Well, like I said, it took a year. I
Right.
think a lot of it was I'm 7 or 8 years old. My daughter's 4 now, and I did not understand what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I didn't realize until I had my own kids that there is a whole different sphere of. I had to kind of re-forgive, if that makes sense. When
Oh,
I
of
became
course,
a
yeah.
parent, I had to go back through all that stuff that had happened and go back to my mum and dad and be like, I can't believe you let this happen
Hmm.
to to your child. I was so innocent. I didn't know. I didn't know it was any different. It
Hmm.
wasn't until I wasn't really telling my mum when I did tell her that it was sexual abuse that was happening. I told her that he'd hurt me because he'd hurt me. And she was like, "Where?" And obviously, then I explained, and immediately that police were called and whatnot. Um, so the strength really just I think it came from somewhere I can't pin down. To be fair,
Hmm.
um, and it was literally like, Mum, this is, there's blood. This is not good. I'm
Hmm.
hurt, and I need to tell you, and it's painful. And I think as I got older, I realised just how severe it was.
Hmm.
And after speaking with many other men who have been through similar things, it does just fracture you as a person. Um, there is a time before and a time after. There is a clear division from when
Hmm.
that happened. The differences. Um, yeah, no, very hard, very, very hard. And it's still painful to talk about it now, to be fair and
Yeah.
honest. It might, I've delivered that to camera and I've shared the story 100 times, if not more. And I still feel it. And I'm able to
Hmm.
keep a lid on it. And, I'm prayed up before I share, and I'll be prayed up after I've shared, because there is a heaviness that comes with this. But I truly believe that my vulnerability and my openness and honesty will hopefully be enough for others to be able to move past it themselves, I hope, in
Hmm.
sharing.
And where were your brothers in all of this going? All this, what happened to your brothers in all of this, if
Well,
anything?
they were in the room next door. So
Mhm.
in our house, it was a 3-bed. My mum had one room, I was in the other, and then the third room had both my younger brothers in. They were sharing. And it was only ever me that
Right.
he did things with. Yeah, and like I said, my middle brother went into care at quite a young age as well. He was taken away. We always had social services visits, which at the time I thought they were just nice people taking us out to the park, but
Hmm.
actually they were doing assessments and other stuff. And yeah, no, it was weird because I look at it then, I'm like, oh, it was just normal, but actually it was so far removed from normal. It's yeah, it's ridiculous, but yeah, no, they weren't involved in any way, thankfully.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now you mentioned social services there, and you said you were bullied at school as well. Did that make you
yeah.
feel like the poor kid on the block? Poor me. Did you ever feel like that?
I was the poor kid on the block. We
Mhm.
definitely had hand-me-downs. We bathed once a week. again, I'll be honest and vulnerable here. I've only recently had my teeth sorted out because my mum never taught me how to brush my teeth. And I'm riddled with issues that I'm continually working through to be a better man, a husband, and a father. That I don't want my kids to be in the same situation.
Mhm.
I'm still, even now, I think I've got ADHD. I won't be surprised. Like it just is what it is. I would say that the bullying, if anything, was it felt really unfair.
Mhm.
Like I was used to being bullied for being the smelly kid because I was the smelly kid. But when I was then being bullied for what had happened to me, I was
Right.
like, am I not a victim enough? Like
Yeah.
why am I now being assaulted for that? And that was when I then started fighting back because I felt the other stuff was, yeah, it is what it is. But now I was like, you can't pick on me for this, and I started fighting back, and I got in a lot of trouble.
I was going to say, did you get expelled? Were you expelled?
Yeah, yeah.
And growing up in school, I mean, and looking back, and of course, you've got a great career now as a wrestler and a pastor and a teacher. But when you're going through all of this, did you ever dream or imagine your life would turn out the way it did?
No, not at all. I had no role models, right? I had no one to look up to. My dad was non-existent. My uncles were the closest I had to like any like male role models, and they were all like brickies and tradies and electricians and stuff like that. So I kind of felt like either I have to get into a trade or I'm going to end up on the dole, not working, sat in the pub drinking beer like every other bloke that I'd ever met. And I didn't have any aspirations. I think the only thing I remember, because my nan bought me books about it, was at first I told her I wanted to be a paleontologist because I love dinosaurs.
That's a
And
big
so,
word.
yeah. And like I was a smart kid, I was a bright kid. Teachers always told me I was bright, and I memorized, the longest dinosaur name is Micropachycephalosaurus, and it's 26 letters. Like, I could rack
Wow.
stuff off. And she was like, right, I'm getting you books on dinosaurs. And she'd buy me books on dinosaurs and bugs and the human body and all this other stuff. And so sciences, I was really into sciences. And she was just happy to be investing in me, I imagine, praying for me and giving me porridge on the Saturday morning and taking me away for Friday night and watching wrestling and just loving on me and being my mother in a roundabout way and just being like, I want to try and help you succeed because home is not going to do that for you.
Mhm.
So, I owe a lot to my grandmother. She was an amazing woman. But yeah, I never dreamed I'd be doing this. Like, don't get me wrong. I sat there and I watched Shawn Michaels and The Rock and Hulk Hogan and all these guys. And I'm like, I want to be like them. And I think a lot of that was kind of built in from the weakness that I felt. Like,
Mhm.
and the bullying. Like I wanted to be liked and I wanted to be strong and I wanted to be popular and have it all together. And all these guys, they look like they had it all together.
Mhm.
Now, as a grown man, I understand Hulk Hogan's only recently come to faith himself. He's had some issues in his life. Shawn Michaels had a severe drug addiction. Recently, he became a Christian about 15 years ago. He's got an amazing testimony. And I got to meet and pray with him, which childhood dream, like to meet my childhood hero and pray with him. Like
Yeah.
never in a million years would I ever say that had happened. And then like this past few months being on all these different TV programs
Mhm.
and being on Good Morning Britain live on TV, talking to Richard Madeley and him asking, well, what's the difference? And me being able to say, Jesus is the difference on national television and being like, it's live. You can't stop me from sharing the gospel here, mate. Like the only thing that changed my life was Jesus. Otherwise, I was going off on a completely different path. And that's what it's about.
So how did you actually start then in becoming a wrestler? You said you got into it in your 20s. So how did you actually start and get your chance to be a wrestler?
Yeah, so I'd uploaded a few videos to YouTube in its infancy.
Mhm.
And there were a few videos of me and my friends just practicing these moves on each other. Clearly, unsupervised, very dangerous. I don't know what I was doing. But me and my friends, we did these moves on each other. And then I got a message through the YouTube page saying, you should go to a training school.
Right.
And I started looking for one. And I found one in Blackburn. So I would get on a coach Saturday morning. I'd travel to Blackburn. I'd learn how to wrestle at this training school, and then I'd travel back late at night and get home. And this guy that I'd been working with, he was also a professional wrestler. And I'm like, God's at work here, because I'm suddenly in the same workplace as a pro wrestler. He starts coming to training with me. He starts teaching me some stuff. And then within 6 months, I was on shows. It was like, it just flew through the training academy. And I think a lot of that was because I kind of had the stuff they couldn't teach. It was like, to be a wrestler, particularly the style that we have, you need to not only have the performance, but you need the personality. And like, you can learn how to do all the moves, but if you're just dry and people don't care and people haven't got anything to kind of, get from you, then you're not going to succeed. Whereas I had all the charisma and the showmanship and the bravado and all that kind of stuff. And they were like, well, we just need to teach you how to do this stuff properly and safely. And you'll be on your way. And that was, 14 years ago now. And, here I am. I've been winning championships, touring the country, doing some phenomenal stuff. And I feel like I'm the best I've ever been at this point, even at 37. I'm still having great matches.
Is that why you dropped the name Angel in the middle of your name?
Yeah. So, like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he changed his name, didn't he? Well, this happened because when we had the BBC documentary, people were Googling Gareth Angel Thompson, because throughout the documentary, they introduced me as Gareth Thompson. But then when they had the wrestler, they said Gareth Angel, but people were kind of searching for both. So that was a Google Analytics thing. I was like, what are people searching for? And how do I take advantage of it? And then people were searching for the full thing. So I was like, right, I'm just going to have to introduce myself as that now. And that seemed to have stuck. So it just kind of ties it all nicely together, I guess.
That one even confused Alan, would you believe? We're going to ask you to speak with us. Now, of course, looking back on your life now and how bad it was and how good it is now, do you think God was training you in some way to be who you are today?
Yeah, definitely. Hindsight's a beautiful thing, right? That we can, at this point, I can look back and I can tell you that there is all these different things. I gave you a quick whistle-stop tour of my testimony just now, but there are other things that I sometimes share where, my grandmother was praying for me all the time. There was a bus that used to come around the Church of the Nazarene, used to take me and my brothers to like a Tuesday night prayer and worship, like Boy Scout style thing. When I was at the homeless hostel, the guy who signed me up is a guy called Angus McNabb, who's a Christian. He's now a friend of mine, and he goes to the church across the street where we're doing the wrestling. So it's surreal for him to know I picked this guy off the street, and now look at him. And he's a massive supporter of Kingdom Wrestling, our charity now, which is great. There was a woman who used to come to the hostel, and she used to teach us how to cook. Her son, who's a young teenager, is now training at our training school. And she's like, what? And then even after that, like Dave Kendall, my good friend Matt Barlow, like all these guys have been kind of in and out of my life and kind of being a part of it, all Christians, all guiding me in the right direction, all pointing me in the right direction. And it's like Jesus was just at work in all of these different circumstances, all these different people. And I don't think there's ever a coincidence that there might be someone watching this right now who's feeling like there's a bunch of things going on, and they're listening to this and they're going, oh, he's had this too. That is not a coincidence. I always say it's Jesus, and he is knocking at your heart.
Well, you've got the look, you've got the ponytail, you've got the tattoos, you've got the beard, you've got everything. So how do you reconcile that with Christianity in itself? Because, I mean, it's very hard, because I don't know, have you ever had any detractors in Christian circles who say, well, you can't really do this, like, it's not really good for the gospel?
Yeah. I think what I need to realize is there's always going to be people who don't quite get it. And what people need to understand about professional wrestling is it's not violence. Although it kind of looks like it is, it's essentially a live stunt show. Everything's choreographed, everything's safe. We are storytellers, if you want to look at it like that. Some people call it soap opera for men. You know, like we're telling stories. And so when I can then put a really short wrestler ring with a really tall wrestler, and we tell the story of David and Goliath, and I then unpack that from the Bible in a sermon immediately after, you can see how that works together. When we're able to have Adam and Eve versus the snake, and the snake wins the fight, the villain wins, and then we're able to then go, okay, but then God comes in and defeats the snake and sends him off, and restores his relationship with Adam and Eve, raises their hands. Like, that's God coming in. So we use it in a way that we tell stories, and we create characters that people can be invested in, because unfortunately, you might know this yourself, George, and everyone else who's watching, there aren't people showing up at church on a Sunday anymore that would have just been generations that their parents did, their grandmothers did. It's not happening anymore.
No, you're quite right.
So how are we reaching them? If I can do an event on a Saturday night like we did a couple of weeks ago, and we get 220 people through the door, and you can't fit any more in, and we're able to share Jesus smack bang in the middle and say, come to Alpha, come to church on Sunday, come to the Christmas service, and then they hear something of Jesus, wrestling is just the hook, but Jesus is front and center every single time. So
Excellent.
we have our detractors, and that's fine. If it's not for you, it's not for you. And if you're already sat in church on a Sunday, it's not for you, because we're trying to reach those outside the church. So let us crack on and cheer us on. And you don't have to come. It's fine.
Excellent.